Welcome to the Recovery Daily Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Abbasi. I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic and stroke survivor. And today I wanted to talk about the battle between how much do we rest and how much do we push ourselves in recovery. So I'm focused a little more on stroke and vestibular issues today. But, doesn't this apply to everybody, really? How much do we rest and how much do we um, push ourselves in life? Like society tells us to, even when you're feeling fatigued, like you got to get up and go at it, right? And I don't think that that is necessarily a positive thing. So I wanted to talk about that and specifically about my feeling. I wonder when I'm sleeping too much and when I'm not. So, like in the past 24 hours, I have slept 12 and a half hours. And that seems crazy to me. Like when I added it up, so I was getting my coffee this morning and I was like, how long have I slept? Because when I'm sleeping, like when I go to bed at night, I'm out like all night long. It's very rare that I'm restless. Um, and so I went to bed at 10 last night and I got up at 6:30. And then during the day, I took a 4-hour nap. And as you know, I've been struggling with some pretty bad symptoms like vestibular symptoms. It feels lately I've been liking it to concussion, like feeling like I have a concussion. I hit my head once on concrete when I was in college when I was drinking, and that feeling of heaviness, like my head felt like a bowling ball, and it hurt to lift my head up off the pillow. That was extreme. This is like the following day, what it felt like. It felt like I had hit my head. That's what it feels like now, on a daily basis. Sometimes I start feeling better, and it's more like this, uh, ache, like just a plain old headache. But lately, sorry, Autumn is pulling her blankets out of her cage right now. Her, we don't call it a cage here, we call it a den. Um, anyway, I don't know what she's doing. Anyway, I get concerned about when I'm sleeping too much. I get concerned when I'm not sleeping enough. And I get tired of sleeping. As funny as that sounds, that's what I feel like. I just get sick of only living half of a day. That's what it feels like. I'm only awake for half of a day ever. And back when in my career, I probably would have paid to be able to sleep 12 and a half hours every day. But I think after sleeping so much over the past 3.5 years, it, I don't know, it just starts getting to me. So I've talked about sleep over the past couple years, more so in the first year. I talked a lot about this, um, what sleep does for us and how we need sleep in order to heal. Um, as I go to my vestibular support group, I hear a lot about how many of them take a nap during the day. And I think it's all, vestibular issues are not always central nervous system. It's not always brain, and almost seems like it's more often not affiliated with the brain, it's affiliated with inner ear. My condition is affiliated with my brain, even though, strangely enough, I was diagnosed with vestibular neuritis. I don't know what in the world, how that plays into it, but we're going to ignore that. That's what we're going to do. Ignore the things that don't make sense. Um, but what I felt like over the past couple years is that I felt like I was being lazy if I was sleeping. And I think that's because that's what I was told, I think, when I was younger or when I was in college or high school. Like, I would sleep half the day, I'd be up half the night and then sleep half the day, and that was laziness. Um, it's not laziness now. Like, I have to change my entire understanding of sleep. The influence that I've had throughout my life about how sleep is laziness. Um, it's not. And I remember, like, my brother has always had a hard time sleeping, it sounds like. And when I would go visit him when I was his employee, he would be up like bright and early, like 5 o'clock in the morning. He had his coffee. He was like, his brain was going. He was solving problems. And I was not like that because I was drinking heavily back then. So my brain was not functioning. And in fact, I was very much physically crumbling and stuff when I would wake up in the morning. And I always felt like that's never gonna be me. I'm never gonna be one of those people who wakes up in the morning and my brain is like solving problems as soon as I get up. Um, and it's true. I'm not a lot of times woken up and having like ideas in the middle of the night that I have to write down or anything. But once I'm able to get my blood flowing, I almost like feel my blood start speeding up. In order for me to actually start my day, I have to sit there and wake up. I've heard of people who actually take longer to wake up than others. And I feel that I have this. It's called something, but I can't remember what it is. But after sleeping for 12 and a half hours for the past 24 hours, you would think that I would feel better, and I don't. I don't feel better. I still feel these concussion-like symptoms. Very triggered by visual stimulation and all of that stuff. So I was thinking this morning, what do I do? Do I keep sleeping to that extent, or should I be pushing myself? And I know from vestibular therapy that I should never push myself past a 5. If I already feel like a 5, then I'm not supposed to be doing my exercises. And it's it's hard. Like, I think this was the battle I had when I went back to work. So the first 2 years after my stroke, and I went back to work, and my doctors, this was before I went to vestibular therapy. My doctors were telling me the same kind of thing. Like, it was a little different. We didn't have a rating scale. It was more like when you start feeling bad, then stop doing what you're doing and rest. Boris, stop licking Autumn. Thank you so much. Um, and but I didn't know to what extent. Like, I always felt bad. I always felt bad. So how do I know how bad I should get before I rest? Um, well, vestibular therapy was very important in that regard. Even vision therapy didn't do that for me. They didn't tell me. It was like, okay, do this exercise. How do you feel? I'm like, bad. Well, the magic in therapy is having a rating scale. So if you haven't been introduced to that, and you're suffering from any kind of brain issues, what I have, what's helped me the most is having this scale. How bad do I feel? I think with migraines and stuff, that has been what's helped me know when I need to lay down and when I can uh, work on a hobby or something. And that inner battle that I've talked about just recently, Boris, stop licking Autumn. The inner battle that I have is that I've talked about is not doing what I want to do when I want to do it. That is where I've got to say, okay, if you were your own child, what would you tell you to do? Um, and that's where the solution is for me. That's what works for me. Um, I there is no point in pushing through the pain in stroke recovery and vestibular therapy. Pushing through the pain is going to make things worse for me. Um, Pushing through, I feel like I'm at a five. Pushing myself through a five is only going to get me to a six, period. I'm not going to be like, oh, it's okay, keep doing it and it'll get better. It's not. It's not going to. And stroke recovery, it's stroke recovery is not linear. We know that. It is two steps forward, one step back, three steps forward, four steps back. Like every day is different. It's so complex and it requires a lot of self-awareness. I think that vestibular recovery, I almost don't even want to say recovery because I don't feel like vestibular issues are something that I recover from. But I, it's not gonna ever go away, but it can get better and it is self-care. So yeah, I would have to categorize everything that I do as recovery. I'm in full-time recovery. Um, that is similar to stroke recovery. It's all going on between my ears. It's all going on in my brain. And my brain has very distinct feedback for me, but I have to stop and pay attention to it. Um, like I said, society glorifies pushing through fatigue, but this does not apply in recovery. Struggling with that feeling that I should be doing more or I want to be doing more is is a real battle. It's a real battle, and that's the stuff that makes me not rest when I need to rest. But healing is sleeping, I should say, is not passive. It's an active part of the process. The best way that I have been introduced to thinking of what sleep does for me, to picture it as an active part of the process, is there are some things that our brains are doing to heal us that can only be done when we're sleeping. It's like what somebody once told me, one of my therapists, or some of the research that I had read is hitting the save button. Sleep is like clicking the save button on a computer. So everything that you've done prior to going to sleep, um, your brain is saving it to its hard drive when you go to sleep. Um, it takes a lot of learning to trust that, to trust those signals, those distinct signals that I get from my brain. And that takes time to learn what they are. Um, it takes a lot of adjusting my own expectations, and that is related to what I was talking about the other day. Um, Progress does not mean that I'm walking 2 miles instead of 1 mile. And you recall recently I was doing that. I started walking 2 miles because I wanted to progress, and it was too much. By the time I got back home, I could barely move myself forward. It was just like I was really dragging myself forward. So last night I did my back exercises. That's what I've changed to. Instead of my push-ups, I've started to do exercises for my back because of my back pain. And I decided I want to still do some kind of push-ups or something to strengthen my arms. So I did push-ups on my knees. And I don't think I've ever done that. And it was very humbling. I hope that doesn't sound ridiculous, but it was very humbling. I feel like I have aged. My body has aged so much since my stroke. Just 3 years. It's like I aged 10 years. That's what it feels like. My physical capabilities, my strength and stuff is just, it's not like it was. And it's a difficult realization. And my body is telling me that it has changed, and I keep pushing it back to the way that it was. And there's some good things in that and some bad things in that. And the bad thing is that I'm injuring myself if I push too hard. If I don't create some structured rest in my life and listen to my body without feeling guilty or feeling like a failure, um, if I don't remember what the beginning of that sentence was, that's terrible. That's, you're listening to a podcast by a stroke survivor. Reminder. But I need to create structured rest. I need to listen to my body and not feel guilty, and not feel like I'm less than, because that's what I felt like last night when I was doing those push-ups on my knees. I was like, this is what you have become. Like that's a bad thing. I'm just not gentle with myself a lot of times. And that's why it's important that I talk about it, say it out loud. Um, I, Forrest just jumped on the couch and then he fell right off immediately. Anyway, it was funny. So recognize that some days I'm going to need 12 and a half hours of sleep. It doesn't mean that I'm regressing. It just means that my body is telling me that's what I need. And recovery isn't always about pushing forward. It's about knowing when to stop, knowing when to stay where you are, and just kind of look at the view from where you are. So today I don't know if I'm going to take a nap or not. I really would like to walk up to the nail place and get my nails done because I have a broken nail. That's what drives me in life. But we'll see. I mean, I'll rest for a couple hours and then see if I might be able to walk up there and get it done. But I really want to feel like when I'm sleeping, I'm moving forward. It just doesn't feel that way. And so I wanted to share about that in case there are other people in stroke recovery or vestibular recovery that feel that way, that feel when you're resting, you're not moving forward. My life is so different than it was just 3.5 years ago. It's fascinating. And if I don't talk about it, I get really sad about it. I never imagined I was going to be sitting in a room by myself with my dogs, but by myself, talking to my computer about my feelings and then posting them on the internet, you know? But that's where I am. And it's important that I do that in case there's anybody else out there feeling the same way. Um, you don't feel alone. So that's where we're at today. Thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.